Some reason I am not seeing anything, but it's telling me that I am live. And I just hate to do this, and no one has gotten a message that I've gone live. All right, so looks like I'm 1 minute in, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. Let's see. Mhm. All right, so um, let's talk about let's talk about boundary setting and burnout and all of those great things. So the one thing that I know is that you can be getting things done, showing up for everyone, and meeting your deadlines that you have, and you can still be running on empty. And that's part of what makes burnout so easy to miss. You may still be functioning and you may still be the person everyone can count on, but everything starts taking more out of you than it used to do. I know that I went through that. And so think about whether or not that's something that you have experienced. And sometimes before you ever call it burnout, your energy has already been trying to get your attention. I'm Dr. Cheryl Williams-Jackson, and I'm a resilience and mental wellness coach. I work with women who spend much of their time caring for and supporting others. And in my work around stress management and mental wellness, I can see how easy it is to keep functioning without realizing how much energy it takes to keep showing up the way that you want to show up. So today we're going to turn some of that attention back toward you. And so I'm glad you're here. And if you're watching the replay, that's wonderful too. And I still read the comments. So please feel free to drop information into the comments. We're going to take a look at what may be draining your energy and begin creating your own personal reset plan. This isn't about doing more, and it's definitely not about adding one more thing to your plate. It's about becoming more connected to yourself, to your energy, and to what actually fuels you, because somewhere along the way, you may have learned a few things. And so let's talk about those things that we sometimes have learned, that exhaustion is a sign of success, or that being overwhelmed just means you care, or even hearing someone say, or even where it's been, we have taken on this thought that you should keep pushing even when your body is screaming for rest. I think about when I go on my bike rides. And so I love my bike rides because I can feel this sense of relaxation. Even after 8 or 15 miles, physically, I can feel the exhaustion, or that I'm getting to that point of exhaustion. And even the thinking that, oh, wow, I've gone too far and I need to get back to my car, or to my house, and knowing that I have to do that. That's a physical exhaustion. But emotionally, when I'm biking, I actually don't feel any stress. Emotionally, I feel really like there's so much more that I can do, and I get this sense of clarity. And so biking may not be what does it for you. That's just something that does it for me. And but you have to think about what brings you that sense of peace. The When I'm talking about burnout, what I'm referring to is that burnout tends to, for me at least, it tends to not necessarily begin with creating physical exhaustion for me. It starts with the emotional exhaustion first. And then physical may come because I'm not getting sleep or I'm not eating right because the stress is there. So it's a little bit different than some of the other stress. And in another video, maybe I'll talk with you about the different ways we experience stress, and how when I see those signs that says no stress, or we're going to get rid of all stress, I actually don't trust those, because life is going to throw stressors at us and we have to learn how to handle some of them. But when I'm talking about burnout, I am definitely not talking about that type of stress, because burnout is something that becomes something bigger that can stop you from doing the things that you need to do. So when we're talking about that, that exhaustion is a sign of success, or overwhelm just means you care, or that we're we're going to keep pushing even when we know our body is saying that it needs rest. When we're doing all that, let me be clear: burnout is just not a badge of honor. And today we're going to begin reclaiming some of what burnout may have taken from you: your energy, your time, your sense of creativity. And even sometimes it feels like it's taken away some of our power. And so here's where we're going today. First, we'll understand why burnout happens. Then we'll explore our nervous system safety and what may be draining your energy, and also how boundaries can help you protect your capacity. And then we'll end with us creating a personal reset plan, or at least beginning to do that, and identify something you want to carry forward in your life. So before we dive in to the teaching, I want to ask you something. What's one thing that's been draining your energy lately, either in your career, in your business, or in your life outside of the world of business and career? But what's that one thing that's been draining your energy? And if you're here with me live, drop that answer in the chat if you feel safe enough or comfortable enough with doing that. And if you're watching the replay, pause for a moment and write it down for yourself. I love when you have a good journal sitting close by so you can jot things down like this. Now, naming it is the first step. And today we're going to start shifting it. Let's get grounded and reset the foundation. Hi, come on in. So, why burnout happens? Most high achievers don't realize that burnout is a slow buildup that happens, because we're conditioned to believe that the more we push, the more we accomplish, but that we're doing good, that's not burnout. But that relentless drive often comes at the cost of your energy, your creativity, and your well being. And burnout can build when your body has been operating in a constant state of doing without time for being. Oh, I just love whenever I have to say that, because there is the difference between doing something and being. It's kind of like when we talk about, when people are filming something that's taking place, we're doing something. But when we are, enjoying what's taking place, we're being in that space. I guess that's the best example right now in my mind I can think of. And but the one thing that we know is that when when burnout is happening and we're operating in that constant state of doing without the time for being, it's causing this sense of exhaustion, and it could sneak up on us, especially when you're in what we call the hustle, of your day, or the hustle of the task that you're working on. Burnout often what it does is it happens when we tie our worth to how much we do. And then we don't set enough boundaries to protect our energy, or we operate from a place of fear or guilt, or even a sense of people pleasing. So let's pause here. And while we pause, I'm going to ask you a question, because I'm going to take a little sip of my water. How many of you recognize some part of this cycle that I'm talking about here? So that's the question for you: is how many of you recognize some part of this cycle? And feel free to drop that. For those of you who are here live in the chat area, go ahead and drop in there what you're seeing and what you're recognizing for yourself. So I see for some of you that it does sound familiar. Okay, good. I mean, I'm good. I'm saying good that you recognize it. And then of course, if you're watching a replay, I want you to just notice what comes up for you. Because one of the challenges is that when you're stuck in this burnout mode, your creativity can definitely feel blocked. Your vision can feel blurry, and everything can become like this heavy lifting that takes place. And that's why we have to talk about the nervous system, because burnout is not just about mindset. Ongoing stress can show up in both our mind and our body, especially when demands have been really high and they've been high for too long. In another video, I talk about how those demands for me, um, came to the place where I had to realize something had to change. And so here's the game changer. Your nervous system plays a role in how confidently or how creative and visibly you're going to show up. As your body begins to feel more settled, it can become easier to access your ideas and your steady presence and how you show up with a lot more ease. So think of your nervous system as one part of how your body responds to stress and demands that we have. When it is on high alert because of stress, overwhelm, or past experiences, it can become harder to access that clarity that I talked about, or that creativity, or building up your confidence and your full potential. So the work isn't to force yourself into visibility or push past your limits. The work is there to support your body in feeling settled enough that you can be seen, heard, and express yourself. And when I'm talking about the work, I'm talking about what you're doing to take care of yourself, that part of it. You can begin exploring, things that are small and simple practices that might just help you feel more grounded and settled. And that's why I'm here to talk with you about this, is because the one thing that I do love doing is helping individuals to explore those small and simple practices instead of going straight to the big, change that you want to take place in your life. And not every practice works the same way for everyone. Like I said, biking for me just happens to do it, but that may not be something that works for you. So notice what feels supportive for your life. If there's one thing at this point in the video I can say, is this week start noticing those things that seem to bring you some sense of peace and comfort, because those are the go-tos that we are going to find later that are there to really support you. If focusing on your breath feels comfortable, take a few slow breaths. We call them intentional breaths, and notice whether that helps you to feel more settled. You can ground yourself in the present moment. And when you do that, you do it by noticing what you can see, what you can hear, what you can feel. So, in other words, when we are grounding ourselves in our present moment, what we're doing is we're noticing what is happening around us, but we're noticing it through our senses. You can also use physical grounding, such as placing both feet on the floor and focusing on your breath. As your body begins to feel more settled, it can become easier to access that clarity and creativity that we were talking about. And you may notice more confidence when you speak, or that steadier energy that I was talking about earlier when you show up on video, or when you show up at work, or you show up on stage, you show up on here on social media, or in a digital format. And a lot of you use Zoom, you show up there live, a, or a clearer place to write from. I was working on a chapter in a book, when I want to say it was four major life changing things that took place over the last 2 years. And it was about 2 years ago when they contacted me about writing this chapter in the book. And I just remember not feeling the clarity that I normally would feel, definitely not feeling confident enough to write a book or write a chapter. And so that's one of the things that burnout or extreme stress can do, is that it can steal that creativity but also it can steal your confidence. And the other thing is, more capacity, you don't have as much capacity to respond to the pressures that are around you without feeling completely drained. So you're already drained because burnout has taken something away from you, but now you're feeling even more of that drain. And so, one of the first things we have to do is talk about what's draining your energy. And here's the truth: you cannot keep giving from an empty cup. And you probably have heard this over and over, and you probably have said it to someone. But it is true. You cannot keep giving from an empty cup. But the good news is that once you name what is draining you, you can begin to reclaim your energy with more intention. And that's what I love seeing with individuals when they get that confidence back to claim their power. And so here we're saying claim your energy and to do it intentionally. And you can start by identifying the energy drains that keep pulling you away from your clarity, your capacity, and how you align with your life, your work, your business, your career, your family. How aligned are all of those things? Excuse me. So these often show up, excuse me, as overcommitments where you're saying yes to the things that are not aligned with your priorities. And so that's another example of this idea of alignment. Or they can show up, not just with overcommitments, but also where you're saying yes to things that are not aligned, but you're also not addressing or making sure that alignment includes your goals or your current capacity that you have. You're sleepy, you want to go home from work, but yet you've said yes to staying an extra hour or working on the weekend. When you know that you were looking forward to that weekend to be able to relax and to recharge yourself. So they can show up as energy drainers in themselves, but they can also show up as energy draining relationships. The conversations that you have or the dynamics that leave you feeling depleted instead of supported. So the drain can also, those energy drainers, they can also show up as unnecessary tasks, filling your to-do list up with work that keeps you busy, but you don't truly love it and it doesn't truly move the needle for you. Or reclaiming your energy is not about more to put on your plate. Okay. And I talk so much about boundary setting, and I don't know if I just enjoy talking about it or I talk about it a lot because I feel that by repeating it over and over again in different ways, that hopefully some of us begin to understand there's this teaching that's taking place where we're being told to push, push, push ourselves toward this sense of burnout. And if you're not doing that, then you're not at your best. And that is truly not a fact, and it's not true. It's about doing less of what no longer is serving you so you have more room for what actually nourishes you or expands you or sustains you. As you begin to notice the patterns, pay attention to the differences between what feels heavy and what feels life-giving. From there, the next step is to honor your boundaries. Release what is costing too much and choose those practices that help you to feel grounded again. And if you're thinking that's easy for me to say, I'm going to come back to talking about that. But let me finish sharing some of these things with you. Another one I want to talk about is boundaries versus this thing we call people pleasing, the saying no. So let's talk about that. This is one of the biggest shifts in reclaiming your energy, and that's setting boundaries. And for high achievers, Boundaries can feel so uncomfortable because many of us have been conditioned to be people pleasers. We want to be helpful because we are in what we call a helping profession, whether we are a nurse working with patients, or we are a coach working with clients, or we created a course, where we have this cohort and we feel that we are committed to giving them everything that we have to give. Anything you say that I'm supposed to give, everything I'm supposed to that I can give, there's a chance that there's some missing boundaries there. I always used to say, when we first went on at the college, when we first went online, and they were saying, to be there for your students, to answer your students' um, emails all the time as soon as you can, and there wasn't really any parameters around it. And I just remember that was when I started saying, and I want to say I probably said it every day, but I started letting students know, you do not have 24 7 access to me, because I need that downtime. So my cutoff for responding to emails, 3 o'clock on Friday, and I don't pick it up until 3 o'clock on Monday, things like that. But when we went into this digital world format, we began thinking that we needed to be there for everyone 24/7, especially when um, especially when we have notifications turned on our cell phones or our tablets or on our computers, and we believe that we need to answer, everyone all the time. But the one thing that has happened with electronics now is that, when I looked at my uh iPhone, and I began seeing on that text message that, oh, wait, I can set messages to be sent out later. I mean, that is like one of the best things ever to create for boundaries. But I had to teach myself to set those boundaries, though, to set it so that it does not go out off on the day that I wrote it, like Saturday, because I'm already telling you that, my self care is that I take my Saturdays very seriously and I use them for myself. And so I don't want to become known as the person who sends those emails out on the weekend. I used to be the one that would send emails out at 2 in the morning, and because I figured people hopefully turned their phones off, and so I had to make a decision for myself that I wanted to educate others about how I want you to see me when it comes to responding to those emails or text messages. And for those of you who haven't gotten text messages back from me or emails back from me, I do apologize. Send them again to me. But I do try, to set that phone or even my emails that I do not send them out at certain times. But I also can appreciate those of you who sets your emails on Friday that says, I am out of the office and away from my email between, Friday until Monday or Tuesday, whatever the day is. Or those of you who set your indicators to say that you're out of town, that you're not available or you don't have access. One of the things I used to enjoy doing in the summer times is going to my father's house because the Wi-Fi barely worked there, and so there was and is, no possibilities for me to send, messages out sometimes from that location. So, but we do it as helping professionals, not only because we're high achievers, but we feel uncomfortable around this idea of setting boundaries sometimes. And I don't know if it's, that we've been conditioned fully to be people pleasers, but I know that we want to be there for our clients. We want to be helpful, and for some, it may be that you want to be liked. And I love the other day that someone gave us a hook to use in sending out a message, and that hook was, I'm not for everyone. And you're not for everyone. Some people will not like you. Some people will listen to this video and not like my voice, not like, that I take drinks of water. You're not for everyone, and that's okay. And sometimes we want to be seen as reliable. So we are very hard on ourselves. And, we want to get those emails out within 5 minutes of them coming in, or we want to be everything to everyone. I remember when I first started teaching that one of the things that I did was I would do everything for my students, like walk. I still do walk them to certain areas on campus when they need to find a certain office. But one of the things I used to do is that I would give them the answers when actually there was someone that was hired to take them through all of that. So now what I do is I will give someone, information, but I'll walk them to the resource that I'm giving to them. But I want to leave the all of that other work in the hands of the person who was hired. Yes, I know. I'm listening, looking at in the chat. Um, I want to give that to um, the individual that was hired to do that job. So I stopped doing a lot of the things that I actually did know because it's good for me to know about it, but it doesn't necessarily means that I'm the one that has to do it. I can even have my clients come back and I can clarify for them what was shared with them with the individual that I have referred them to. So, so the idea here is that you don't have to do all that to be reliable. And I have to say that people pleasing is this silent energy drainer, and over time, it can quietly drain your capacity to lead well. So I just want you to pause. I just gave you a lot. So I would love it if you just take a minute, or 30 seconds, whatever you want to take, but just pause right here and take a deep breath. And while you're taking your deep breath, I'm going to take a sip of my wonderful, beautiful, great tasting water here. So when you say yes to something that is misaligned, or that you feel that is urgent for someone else, or it's beyond your capacity, you're often saying no to your own clarity and your own rest, your own creativity, and your own peace. So we have to be very careful about how and when we say yes to something, and give time to check in with ourselves. For me, a lot of times it's looking at my calendar, or it's me checking in, with someone else because they may know, something that's coming up. And I want you to think about that. When you say yes to something, do you have something that you do before you say no, yes? Is there a way you can check in with yourself? Because again, remember, we're trying to maintain alignment, but what it can cause is misalignment. And everyone else's, urgency is not always your urgency. And the idea here is, don't go beyond your capacity. And that was the example I was using about, my job description is not that I do a certain thing because there's actually someone else that was hired to do that. But I definitely want to know about it so that I can help the individual after they've talked to the person, that I can help them to clarify it. Okay. So I'm not taking away the sense of that I want to help someone, but sometimes that partnership with someone else, oh, what a beautiful thing to have a partnership where I'm able to walk over to, like another resource place, or another clinic, and say, hey, you all offer this. So I've referred my client and I know the name of the person, and I'm able to say, hey, I'm sitting here with my client and they're going to be coming over, or they're going to be calling you. And I just wanted to make a connection and kind of introduce you all. That I can do. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense what I'm saying, that I'm not taking away from you, your capacity to do something. Um, And definitely it does not mean that you stop caring. It means you stop abandoning yourself in order to prove that you care. And here's the truth. Healthy boundaries actually build trust. When your clients or your collaborators and your community know where you stand, they experience you as a clear, steadier, and more trustworthy person. So I want you to ask yourself, where in your career or in your business or in your life are you overgiving? And are you responding to everyone's email, message, or request as if it is an emergency? Or are you saying yes before you check in with your own capacity? And also, let me throw in there, are you giving more access, time, and emotional labor than you currently have capacity for? And the reality is this: boundaries are not selfish. They are how you protect your energy and how you honor your capacity, and you lead from the place of alignment instead of resentment. Okay. Now, what I want to do is I want to switch up a little and talk about grounding practices that we can have. And so, grounding is more than a trendy term that you hear people use. I think that I will continue to use that word grounding because I think that we do need to ground ourselves, because it is a practical way to reconnect with your body and to support a sense of steadiness and return to your power when stress or overwhelm begins to take over. These practices, they do not need to be complicated or time consuming. Even 5 intentional minutes can create such a meaningful shift. And I'll tell you now, grounding yourself, is just a way to keep you centered, to keep you connected to what is happening around me. Am I feeling? What are my emotions right now? And so what I want to do is I want to give you just a few simple techniques that you can explore for yourself and share with others. The first one, of course, is breathing. If focusing on your breath feels comfortable, inhale slowly through your nose for 4 counts and hold for 4 counts, and then exhale for 4 counts. Now, just know that that's just one way. For those of you who do your breath work, just know that I'm giving something, just one example of, you know, of a way to breathe and to begin to take care of yourself that way, because that should be our first go to, is the deep breath. That should be our first go to. Why? Because we carry that with us everywhere. And that deep breath has a way of just taking care of you. We always want to deep breathe when troubled times are there, but I'm saying that we should practice just deep breathing ongoing. And so if this is something you're focusing on and you want to start simple, start with in through the nose for the count of 4, and you, or whatever your count of 4 is, and then hold it for 4 counts and then exhale for 4 counts. There's others that I use as well, but this is my simple one that I'm giving you in this video. And then the other thing I want to say is to repeat that 3 or 4 times and notice whether it helps you to feel more settled. And if it doesn't help you to feel settled, if you walk away saying, out to yourself or out loud, that doesn't work for me, then there's something else that works. And so another thing that works for some of us is journaling. I love setting a timer for 5 minutes and write down whatever is on my mind. But the other thing is, when it comes to journaling, and I teach this in my journaling session, is that I'm looking around to see if any of my journals are here. But the one thing that I do is that I know a blank page sometimes stalls us. So what I do in advance is I design my journal pages. For those of you who know that I do junk journaling, and for those of you who don't know what junk journaling is, just do a search for it. It's something that I truly enjoy doing. And I'll just give you an example. I don't want to start talking about it much because it's like, I show you one picture of my grandbabies, and then next thing you know, we've gone through 6 albums of pictures of them. But junk journaling, pretty much an example, is something I just did, which was, we went shopping for groceries, and I uh we needed to buy Cheerios, and so that was on Friday. By Saturday, the Cheerios was in the plastic box, or plastic container, and the Cheerio box had become this beautiful Snoopy, with material over it, but it had become a journal. In other words, because I had taken paper, sewn the paper in, made the cut the Cheerio box up into the cover and covered it up, things like that. And so for me, that helps me with my clarity. But also, when it comes to journals, I like designing them, and then I love using them. And it doesn't have to be a blank page, because I'll go and print out some prompts and then paste them on the pages before I even get to write on them, because I don't want to start with a blank page. And so you'll have to come to the um, journaling session to hear a little more about various ways to get started with journaling and the importance of journaling. But the one thing that I know with journaling is that, it can create and help you to create this clear mental, um, or I should say, reduce the mental clutter that can take place. And it can give your thoughts a place to land where they're just not living in your head. And then there's a third grounding that I want to talk about, and that is if you stand or sit with both feet on the floor and just notice the support beneath you, or soften. Like right now, my shoulders, I think I've been holding them up, and so softening my shoulder and bringing your attention back to your breath again. So there we go. We're back at the breath again, where I'm just listening to myself breathe. And other thoughts may come in. The idea of mindful meditation is not necessarily to remove all thoughts. Actually, we say be respectful to the thoughts, that and thankful that the thoughts are coming to us. But at the time, it's okay for you to say, okay, I got to remember that thought. But now I want to go back to my breathing. And again, the more you tell yourself, don't think while you're breathing, the more the thoughts are going to come in. It's just like right now, if I was to say to you, without touching your knee, what does your knee feel like? Now you're going to start thinking about, and I don't want you to really think about your knee, but you're going to start thinking about your knee. But these grounding practices can definitely support you, but they also can support, whether you work with patients, or clients, as a therapist, or as a coach, or a human service provider, a social service provider. What you're doing is, these things can help not only you to practice them, but they also can help your clients. So, grounding practices can support you and those individuals that you work with in returning to the center and making clearer decisions, and moving from a place of steadiness, instead of pressure or overwhelm that can take place. All right. So now what I want to do, we're almost there. And what I want to do now is talk about personal reset plan. Welcome. Right now, I know that you're probably, as you coming in the room, just know that I cannot pull up my the chat area, but feel free to go ahead and leave something in the chat area, and I'll see it afterward, and I promise I will respond. All right, now I want to move into the most important part of today's time together, and that's your personal reset work. All right. So if you're just coming on, just go back and you're going to be able to listen to the full video, and then you'll be able to get to this point of what you're creating, the reset that you're creating. All right. So this is where you pause and you get honest and you begin to create a personal reset plan for your business and life right now. And if you're part of my 5-day Healthy Me adventure group, this can be one of your adventures. Here we're simply calling it your personal reset plan. And if something comes up as you work through it, that's also something we can talk about on the porch. For those of you who are in the 5 day Healthy Me Adventure group, we can talk about it on the porch. And for those of you who are here, you are welcome to just follow along as we go, and you're going to create your personal reset plan. And again, if something comes up for you, though, that's also something we can talk about. And just remember that this is not about fixing things right now. You simply need to see what's been draining you. I want you to honor what your body has been trying to tell you and give yourself permission to make a new choice. I'm going to say that again. So you're going to explore what is draining you, and we're going to honor what our body has been trying to tell us, and we're going to give ourselves permission to make new choices. So for those of you who need to, grab a worksheet or a notebook or your iPad or your phone, whatever you want to write these things down with, and we'll walk through this together in three simple parts. The first step is the energy audit. The energy audit, and we're starting with the truth. What's draining you? And I just want you to list anything that is currently pulling on your energy mentally, emotionally, physically, or in the way you're using your time and your attention. Okay. So I don't want you to do any filtering. I don't want you to do any judging. I want you to just write it down. And then when you finish doing that, and you're welcome to pause the video to do that. Um, and then after you do that, I want you to look at your calendar, look at your content, whether you're writing something or you're working on something, you're recording things. I want you to look at your client containers. Who is on your list? Who are your clients? Who are your patients? And give me just 1 second here. And I want you also to think about your relationships and your personal commitments that you have. And I want you to ask yourself, what do I keep saying yes to? Even though it is no longer feeling like it's part of your alignment, what do you keep saying yes to? And what do you dread but continue to do it out of, whether it's guilt, it's fear, it's a habit, or it's out of obligations? And where do you feel constricted or resentful or unable to breathe, whether that's in your career, your business, or your life? What stops you from taking those deep breaths that you need? So, even though I'm not going to take the 2 minutes to do this, but I want you to take 2 minutes, pause the video, and write down every energy drain that comes to mind, whether it's big or small. And if you're watching the replay, you can pause also here and come back when you're ready. Okay. And then I want you to look at what you wrote down and circle three energy drains you're ready to shift this month. And even though this month, that we're in, or when you're viewing this, maybe toward the end or the middle, I want you to look at it as 30 days, is how I want you to see it. So I want you to circle the top three energy drains that you have, and you're ready to shift them within the next 30 days. And these will become your anchors for the reset. Or for those of you in the 5 day adventure, it will become your adventure for the month. All right, I think we're ready for step two. So, step two is the boundaries reset. Next, we're going to rebuild the boundaries that protect your energy. And we're going to look at each of those top three that you selected. Give me a second to turn on some air here. The top three energy drains that you circle, and ask yourself, what boundaries would protect your energy? What boundaries that you could set to protect your energy based on those three? the energy drains that you circled in our step one. Okay. So, what would protect your energy? And what would that boundary sound like in clear, respectful language? What would it sound like to set that boundary? So, what would that boundary sound like in clear, respectful language? And I'll give you an example of one of mine is when someone asks me to do something, and I may say, I want to thank you so much for thinking of me for that. However, I'm going to have to say no. And in another talk, I'll talk about how hard it is sometimes for us to say that no in that way. But if you have a script already ready for and you're able to practice them, you're not faced with the uneasiness, that can is greater that can come with you saying no. And I'm not saying it'll take away all of the uneasiness, but having a script actually can help you to know what I can say when I'm asked this, so that nervousness doesn't take over. So, what would that boundary sound like in clear, respectful language, and what action would help you to reinforce it consistently? And like I said, one action could be is having it written down how to say no. Okay. And so you can hold on to those types of responses. I don't know what's going on. I'm seeing some comments. So thank you for sharing that. And I see where you're talking about that your boundary is that if it's a weekend that you're being asked to work, that you're comfortable with saying no. And I want you to think about how do you go about saying that no. So thank you for that message. For some reason, some messages are coming in, and some I can see like I don't know what it is. It's like I'm not seeing the whole thing, but I will see them afterward. I just am not able to get my YouTube functioning on here. All right. So let's see. Um, so you can write your responses down. So I'm going to give you an example. So an energy drain again could be clients texting you at all hours. And that boundary may be that you set, like they have Voxer, where you can set the hours or the time that messages can come through. And you stick to them, even if they message outside of those hours. Or how about another one? An energy drain can be over committing to collaborators that I don't really want to do. I don't want to work with a certain individual. That boundary may be that you pause before you say yes and you ask yourself, is this aligned, or am I avoiding the discomfort of having to answer this individual? And this is about giving your energy a clear assignment and protecting it like the valuable asset that it is. So I want you to take a few minutes and write one boundary or new standard for each of your three top energy drains. And again, if you're watching the replay, I want you to pause and give yourself whatever time you need. And for those of you that I see in the chat area, feel free to in that journal of yours to write things down or on that sheet of paper, whatever you're using. And but take 2 or 3 minutes to do that. Even though I'm not giving you the time here, because I want to begin. I want you to get out there and go do something with the beautiful day that's taking place if you're watching this during the daytime. All right. And for those of you, of course, like I said, that are in the 5 Day Healthy Me adventure group, if you notice an energy drain or a boundary that you want to through a little more, remember to bring it with you to the porch. Because each week for the month, we are doing those porch talks. And for those of you who may be interested in it, please just leave a comment or you can reach me on my social media. So these are the kinds of conversations we can have, in the different spaces that we are in, but you can have with others that are on a journey with you around being healthy, more mentally well and healthy. But I want to get to our step number three. And so step number three is your nervous system refill plan. So having a plan in place to refill what you have emptied out, and so your nervous system refill plan. Now we're going to, and so we're going to end with the part many people skip, and that's replenishment. If you are removing what drains you, you also need to name what will fill you back up. And let me say that again. If you are removing what drains you, you also need to name what will fill you back up. And if you have to, I really want you to write that down. So, one 5-minute practice that helps you to feel grounded, steady, and safe is what we're going to be thinking about. We're going to think about one environment shift that helps you to feel more settled, such as less noise, more nature, or a clearer space. Okay. So, we're thinking about what helps us to feel grounded, steady, and safe. And we're also looking at what environment shift that can help us to feel more settled, such as less noise, a clear space that we create, or more nature. If you've been following me with my 5-day adventure, you'll remember that there was one post where I emptied out my whole closet because it wasn't feeling like a clear space for me. There was just confusion. Me trying to figure out what to wear took more time than it needed to take. So I took everything out of my closet and began to refill it with things that I knew that worked for me, and those that didn't right now, they were yesterday's things. And so I removed them. I gave them to people. I put them in storage, whatever I needed to do. And then I also want you to think of one person or one ritual or routine that you have, or a space that helps you to recenter when pressure starts to build. So for some of you, it may be going for a walk through a garden. For others, it may be that you go to your prayer. But or persons, people, who do you call up for that clarity and that recentering that you need? Okay. So I want you to think about that also. These become part of your personal reset plan. They become your go to supports when pressure starts to build. And you have to have them written down. Why? Because under stress, we don't think as well with clarity. We don't have as much clarity. We don't think about, what can I do? And later we may say, oh, why didn't I think of that? So write them down. I want you to write them down. I want you to claim them. This is how you create more room for steadiness without having to earn it through that hustle that takes place. So take a moment with that. And if you're watching the replay, again, pause if you need to, more time. And once you completed those 3 pieces, take a deep breath. You just began your personal reset. You don't have to fix everything today. And you just need to honor what your body and your energy have been trying to tell you all along. Burnout isn't your baseline, but clarity and safety and power, that can be your baseline. Okay. So now that you've completed your personal reset plan, I want to give you a moment to bring one part of it into the room. And so if you are here live with me, choose one thing that you want to share in the chat area, one energy drain you notice, one boundary you're considering, or one go-to support you want to carry forward. And you don't have to share everything. Just choose what feels comfortable to put into the room. And if you're watching the replay, or you would rather keep this private, pause for a moment and write it down. One thing you most want to remember from your personal reset plan. Okay. And I'm going to give you a moment to do that, and then we'll keep going. I'm going to see if I can get it on here now. Nope, still not on mine. Okay. All right. So let's see. Before we wrap up, I want to talk through a few questions that often come up around this. And if you're here live and you have a question, go ahead and drop that in the chat, and I'll keep an eye to see if those are coming in because it looks like they are coming in on this screen, but just not on my phone right now. And so I'll keep an eye out. And I also brought a few questions with me that came from last month's porch talk. And so there were a couple of questions that the women asked. And so I brought those with me. So some of you that are viewing this, you probably will hear your question answered here because we've already talked about them on the porch, but I thought I would bring them here as well. All right. So and it's because these are questions or and things that people often wrestle with when they start paying attention to their energy, their boundaries, and what they need. So let's start with one. So this question is: what if I know something is draining me, but I can't remove it right away? Okay, let me make sure I got it right. I'm reading it right here. Let's see. All right. Yeah. So what if I know something is draining me, but I can't remove it right now. So let me answer that. This is really important because identifying an energy drain doesn't automatically mean you have to remove it from your life. Sometimes you can't remove them. You may have a responsibility you need to keep, and you may have a job you cannot leave right now. You may be caring for someone, or you may have a client commitment or a personal obligation that is real and necessary. So I get that. But it does not excuse you from taking care of yourself. So the question becomes different. Instead of only asking, how do I get rid of this? Ask yourself, is there anything about the way I am carrying this that can change? Is there a way that something can change in how I'm carrying this? Maybe the responsibility has to stay, but your access does not have to remain unlimited. And maybe the task has to get done, but it doesn't have to be treated like an emergency every time. And maybe you can't remove the commitment, but you can look at the amount of time and the emotional labor or the attention that you're giving to it. And maybe there's a boundary that you can create around when you respond and how much you take on or what you need before or after the responsibility. And sometimes the first step really is just awareness. And you may not be able to change the situation today, but how you understand that is costing you energy. And that's what matters because instead of telling yourself, I should be able to handle all this, you can begin asking, what would help me carry this without draining myself quite so deeply? Your personal reset plan is not asking you to pretend your responsibilities don't exist. It's helping you notice where your energy is going and where even one small adjustment might protect some of your capacity. So you don't have to solve the whole, thing today. Look for one place where you have a choice, and that may be enough for your next step. And I think I'll answer one more. I have four of them here, but I think because I was trying to keep this under an hour, but I'm going to finish this. What if, and the next question is, what if setting a boundary makes you feel guilty? Ugh, because we already know for many of us, it will. And again, what if setting a boundary makes me feel guilty? This one comes up a lot, especially for people who are used to being dependable, available, helpful, and the person who everyone can count on. Sometimes we assume that if setting a boundary feels uncomfortable, the boundary must be wrong. But discomfort does not automatically mean you are doing something wrong. You may simply be doing something differently. And if you are accustomed to saying yes quickly, waiting before you answer can feel, yeah, it can feel very uncomfortable. And if you are accustomed to being available all the time, setting communication hours can feel uncomfortable. And if if you are accustomed or people are accustomed to having a certain level of access to you, changing that access may feel, and say it with me, uncomfortable for you and for them. So when guilt shows up, pause before letting the guilt make the decision. And ask yourself, did I actually do something harmful, or did I simply make a decision that someone else may not prefer? Or did I act against my values, or did I honor my capacity? Those are different things. A healthy boundary doesn't mean you stop caring. We talked about that earlier. It means you stop abandoning yourself in order to prove that you care. And you can start small. A boundary may simply be waiting before you say yes. Or it may be turning your notifications off at a certain time. Or it may be communicating when you are available, and instead of assuming you always have to be available. The goal is not to become someone you who never feels guilty. The goal is to notice the guilt without automatically handing it the power to make every decision for you. You see, you can care about other people and still have boundaries set. Both can be true. Okay. So I think I want to stop there and just say, don't forget to refine your energy, audit. If you choose to continue with the energy audit, review what you captured today and add anything you noticed this week about what drains you versus what energizes you. And then choose your top 3 energy drains. You may choose the 3 patterns, the obligations that you have, or habits you most want to shift. These are the areas where you can focus your attention first. And then the third one is to set one micro boundary. And if a boundary feels useful, choose one small boundary that protects your capacity this week. If if something else just came to mind, but yeah, creating that micro boundary, is that choosing a small boundary that that can protect you this week. And it can just be you saying no to a last minute request, or turning off your notifications after 6 p.m., or not checking your DMs first thing in the morning. And then I want you to practice one nervous system refill. Because remember, when we take something out, we want to put something in. And so you may choose one 5-minute grounding or replenish practice from your refill plan and use it intentionally this week. And if you want to, share your top insight or boundary in the live chat next week, or in the comments area after this video. And if you're in the 5-day adventure group, notice what comes up for you. And if there's something you want to talk through, bring it to the porch. So before we close, let's bring everything back to the core truth of today's session. You are not lazy. You are not unmotivated. You are not broken, and you are likely just burnt out or feeling a lot of stress from operating in ways that were never meant to sustain you. Burnout isn't a personal flaw. It can be a signal that something in the way you're operating needs your attention. And now you're listening. Your job this week isn't to do more. It's to ground into what energizes you. So every action you take moving forward comes from your alignment and not from obligations, because protecting your energy helps you to show up for what matters most. And we're here to build from that. If you're here live, drop one word in that chat that captures what you're taking with you today. And if you're watching the replay, write that one word down for yourself. then go close your laptop or walk away from the computer and go breathe and come back to your body, your and just remember you're right on time. And what I'm going to go do right now on this beautiful, beautiful day that we're having, I don't know what time it is right now. It looks like it's in the it's 6 o'clock. I am literally going to get up from this seat. I'm going to stretch. Been sitting here for an hour, so my physical therapist, if watching, is probably saying she's been sitting there and she hasn't stretched like she was supposed to. But so I'm gonna go do that right now. But I'm gonna go hop on my bike. I'm gonna go ride for a couple of miles and just enjoy life right now. So I'm hoping that that's what you're about to do. So thank you for being here, and those of you who are, came in live, I apologize for the glitches that we were having. But I'm glad that you showed up, that you were here. And for those of you who are watching the replay, I will be setting up the where you can skip around or you can come back. But I want you to do that thing that I do, which I say when you're watching a video, write down the name of the video, write down the marker where you stopped so you can pick it up and finish that video. All right, everyone, have a good day.